Oh, we need that for the recording. Okay. Is it on? Okay. All right. We'll give it a second because we got to get set up. Rod, so do you have a program? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started while they're setting up. So this morning, we've got a presentation. We've got Raj Jaddev from Debug in Silicon Valley in San Jose, who is basically the pioneer of something called, or we're calling Participatory Defense. You didn't wear your shirt today. Okay. Monty's got it. Okay. So we have Raj. We have Adrian Aiken, who comes from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, who runs participatory, who does other things, but she also runs their group there. And then we have Umani Mfalmi, is that how, did I get it right? Mfalmi, from Knoxville, Tennessee, who works with, runs an organization there. She works with the public defender in Knoxville, who's a friend of mine, also very closely associated with Gideon's Promise, Mark Stevens. And so I've been trying to get them to come to Houston and come talk to us, but also yesterday we spent the day with folks at Texas Organizing Project, which is, to me is like the best community activist group in Texas. It's based in Houston, it's based in Austin and Dallas, and they've taken on a lot of criminal justice issues, but they do other things like voter rights campaigns and a whole host of stuff. So I thought if we were going to bring participatory defense, which I'm going to let Raj explain, that they would be a good nucleus to get that started. So we spent from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. yesterday. I bought pizza for everybody to have lunch yesterday, and we had a number of community activists. Huh? 2 p.m. 2 p.m. No, wow. No, it didn't even feel like 2 a.m. It went by really quick. It went by really quick, and the folks we had there were really excited. I think it's something that can happen. But here today, because the way it works is they have to have a connection with folks in the legal community, and especially a public defender's office. So this is for them today to explain a little bit how we would be part of that process and what would happen. And then, we'll have lots of time for questions and discussion. But since we're recording this, everybody's talking.
Oh, okay. All right. Morning, everybody. First off, I apologize for being late. We're sort of all over the place this morning, but we know Houston much better as of this morning. And it's really exciting to be here. Alex and I have been talking about kind of collaborating for years, and I see some familiar faces from Gideon's and that family that we get to see kind of every year or so. We're going to give a background on really a methodology or a process, an organizing strategy of how communities that have been targeted by the criminal justice system and dealing with the trauma and the fallout and the destruction of incarceration, how they could play a role in being part of the effort to free their loved ones. And that almost always comes down to seeing how they could build collaboration and partnerships with public defenders. So in a lot of ways, the question is, how can community be a better resource for you all to be the advocates that you are in the courtroom, both on an individual case level, then also secondly in a larger, more policy-oriented way, or kind of the atmosphere that these cases have to go in. So we're going to show some slides, but I was really thinking when Alex and I were talking yesterday, if we can make this a little bit more casual and interactive, we'll kind of lay out and put on the table kind of what this thing has looked like in San Jose and in Pennsylvania and Tennessee, but would really be curious about what you think is possible here in Houston. And we had a great day yesterday talking with the community at Texas Organizing Project. They felt really familiar to us. They're kind of a mirror image of what a lot of our organizations look like. So we've seen what those community touchstones are able to do when they get sort of licensed to build with public defenders, and a lot of our families are tributes. Their freedom is tributes to that partnership. So we'd like to see what's happening here, and we've been excited about Houston, not just because we know Alex, so that's a big part of it, but also because, you know, there's some cities across the country that seem like they're on the forefront and have been able to do some things in the past couple of years that the rest of us look to for inspiration and guidance. And Houston, what you all have been able to do, I mean, even just the arrival of the Defender Office, the work around bail. I wore this shirt in honor of you all. It says, "End money bail." Also says, "Free our people." California did not get that part of the shirt, but that's a whole other story. And also the work that the community's been doing about working their kind of electoral political muscle to changing who's at the decision-making points of the criminal justice system, like these judges and that sort of thing. So, does that sound good? Okay, all right. And you can tell we're fairly casual, so if you want to ask questions or bring up stuff while we're talking, please do. Just as a way of background, so participatory defense is a practice for families whose loved ones are facing criminal charges on how they can impact the outcome of a case of a loved one as non-lawyers, and then collectively also impact and transform the landscape of power in the courts. And what you're looking at is actually one of the kind of first meetings. It always kind of makes me giggle on the inside because I'm explaining just a meeting, you know, but I'm trying to make it, you know, but people think it's like something new. It's really basic fundamental community organizing. So everyone here sitting at this table has a loved one that's facing criminal charges. So Gail, who's facilitating the meeting, her son Lamar is sitting over there on the other side in the Knicks jersey. He was facing a resisting arrest charge that he was fighting. Blanca, her son Rudy, is at the end of the table. Was a youngster at that time. He was in the juvenile court system. He was facing a serious felony. He was also severely developmentally delayed. Police took advantage of that, and so she was trying to challenge the charge itself. And Ceci, her dad, was actually facing deportation as a result of his contact with the criminal justice system. And so these kind of case profiles probably feel very familiar. It's probably what you might call this a Wednesday afternoon in your work, or I don't know, right? So it's really just about perspective and vantage point. So what we say in participatory defense is every one of these folks would be facing this path regardless of meeting us. And it would be the most trying, dangerous, frightening journey that they think they've ever been on. The difference with participatory defense is we're saying you don't have to walk this road alone, and it doesn't have to be an isolated journey. And that sort of subtle difference of approach that community organized is sort of baked into thinking and philosophizing about is really runs and cuts against what we think the design of the criminal justice system is, which is fundamentally based on isolation and forcing people to make decisions in isolation, having lack of information, and having a sense that they don't have agency and power to do something with others or in concert with others to push back and change the outcome of the situation. So what you're looking at is a weekly meeting. All that gibberish was just to say that. It's a weekly meeting where families come together, the loved ones are facing charges, they don't know what to do, they don't know who to turn to, and they don't know if it'll ever possibly have a hopeful ending. And they're going through every person that is at that meeting's name and asking themselves, where are we in the case? Like, can we locate procedurally where the case is? And then are there tactical things we as family and community could do that could impact the outcome of the case? And that, of course, can range. It doesn't necessarily mean that it turns out that they have an alibi that surfaced out of nowhere. It could be something as subtle but meaningful, like going to court with each other so that the prosecutor and the judge knows that this person has family and community that cares about them and can color their impression of who they are so they don't think they're just an island to themselves or just a case file. So we didn't arrive at this sort of realization that there are things we can do as non-lawyers that community can do. It was sort of a moment of self-critique, actually. So as an organization at Debug, that's where I'm from, by the way. So the organization I'm from is called Silicon Valley Debug. And we weren't doing anything with courts. We were doing a lot of youth work and work with families, did some media. We actually make shirts, made the shirt in the basement. We have a music studio for youngsters. We're kind of that community touchstone that people go to. They identify their futures and hopefully go on their way. But when people were going to Debug, police were picking them up. And we had young people that were catching resisting arrest charges and drunk in public for no reason, disturbing the peace, and all the issues that you all see and know about. And we also had a really pivotal moment in our organizational story where the father of a member of ours was killed by a state drug agent. It was a case of mistaken identity. They were doing a probation search of a home, and Karina and Regina's dad, Rudy, was driving by, and he vaguely matched what they thought was the description. Latino male in his mid-40s with a mustache, which in San Jose is more than a couple people. And they chased him, unmarked cars. Rudy got out of the car. They shot him from 30 yards away in the back. He was unarmed. And that was a defining moment for us as an organization that really had no specific political inclination, but knew that we wanted to protect the people that we cared about. So we went to the family, supported the family, actually got the first open grand jury indictment in California history. And they shut down open grand juries after that. But we kind of became that group that people knew about in our city when something went wrong with police. So people we didn't know were coming to us because they saw us on the nightly news doing a protest and doing a rally and that sort of thing. And more people started coming to us that had issues beyond just the point of contact with police. So like as a community organization, and I'm sure TOPS like this, and there's probably a dozen, within a half-a-mile radius of this building, where if something happens, like someone's gets racially profiled or gets tased by police or gets beaten, there's an instinct and sort of a handbook that is built into our DNA as organizers of how to flex community power in the streets. And so we knew how to hold the rallies and the marches and that sort of thing. But when people would come to us and say, yeah, I got racially profiled and I got court next Wednesday, we were kind of like, man, good luck. Like, hope it goes well. Or, the most we would do, like our kind of bandwidth of agency was, okay, let's throw a car wash for bail money. Like, that was kind of it. And so it was actually a retired public defender who said, you should use that community power in the courts. And so it was at that moment that we realized that we were kind of actually cutting against our entire belief system in collective action. And our basic sort of premise of ideologically that we're stronger together than we are alone. And so we were relinquishing power in the most important moment when an individual had to face a prosecutor and had to face charges and had to face a judge and had to go into a building with bailiffs with guns and that sort of thing. And so the results were, probably the way they are everywhere in the country. 98% plea rate in the county that I'm from, families and communities decimated. And so all we really did was bring this basic science of community organizing and layer it on top of a criminal justice system that had been isolated from it. And because of that sort of moat around the court, that kind of protective skin that community feels like there's nothing I could do there, or I'm not a lawyer, so that's not my arena to make change, allowed that to continue. And so we essentially penetrated that bubble and said we'd be irreverent to this idea that community can't participate. And so what the meetings became is what built a practice of meeting every week and families coming, and we're going to explain the kind of like nuts and bolts of what happens in those meetings a little later. And it started having this really powerful transformative effect for not just the case outcomes, because we certainly saw, families being able to make what we'll show you. I brought some social bio packets that it better explains their loved ones, or reviewing discovery and saying, I'm from this neighborhood, this isn't true, and getting that to the investigator, or saying, oh, it turns out I do have there's video surveillance at the liquor store, and getting that to the defense attorneys investigators early instead of, a mile down the road when that stuff has been taped over. All that stuff resulted in acquittals. It resulted in cases getting dismissed. It resulted in sentences being reduced. But it was transformative for the people that were in the room too, because the experience was supposed to strip them of power and agency. And as community organizers, your litmus test isn't just the sort of outcome that's explicit. It's also, can a process that was supposed to be oppressive and strip you of power, can you actually become more powerful in that process? And that's exactly what happened to the community. It's what we expect to see with TOP, where Gail, who first came for her son, is now leading these weekly meetings. And so we saw a change in the perspective of who was there. We saw case outcomes. One thing I didn't necessarily mention yesterday, but I think is important for this room, is the understanding of the role of the public defender changed. Because as you all know, there is a narrative about public defenders, I would say because of the vacuum that has been left by public defenders not telling their story. That's maybe a whole other conversation. And because of that ceded ground, DAs and police get to tell the story of who you all are supposed to be and what that work's supposed to be. And so as a result, people would come to this meeting. This probably still happens in Knoxville, and it probably still happens in Montco. People come in with that narrative in mind. And so